Podcast Network is brought to you by Game Time. Snag the tickets without the stress. Use promo code SGPN on your first purchase to save $20. Download the Game Time app and use promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Play the Underdog Pick'em in college or NFL and win up to 20 times in one game. Plus, every Sunday they're giving away $100,000. Use promo code SGPN at Underdog Fantasy for a 100% deposit bonus up to $500.
I'm just about that action, boss.
You have to be kidding me. That is impossible.
I'm raising the ante. Anybody wants any deal?
Jordan Davis, dog. Jalen Hurts, dog. AJ Brown, dog. How many of you want to eat a W tonight?
That's right. Welcome in, of course, to the NFL Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. He's Munaf, the Machine Manji. I am Rod Villagomez. Yes, you are hearing different voices than you normally do. And in fact, maybe a familiar voice, as I will once again be joining you for this recap edition and look ahead. Both J Mark and Moneyline unavailable today, off doing big things in their respective fields. So we'll sit in for them, Munaf, and try to hold down the fort while they're gone. So, yeah.
Don't want to call anybody out here, Rod, but I'm not going to mention why they're both out for this pod. But hey, we're going to try to fill in the best we can. This is actually my first recap show for the NFL Gambling Podcast, and hey, a bit of a role reversal here. You're hosting, and I'm in the color chair here because it's the other way around, at least on the Propcast.
I know, right? It feels a little weird. When I first started off, I was like, wait a second, I shouldn't be doing this. This should be Munaf. But yeah, definitely looking forward to doing this. And yeah, this is your first recap show. It's crazy. I know Ryan and I were the ones that pioneered this little recap show. And then, of course, we sort of handed it off to J Mark and Ryan, who have done a fantastic job of getting you guys value. Because really the star of this show is, of course, the look aheads, right? The week 6 look aheads, as we try to get you a little bit of value heading into the next couple of weeks. Because as I said before, anybody can get you looking ahead to next week. We want to get you value into week 6. But of course, to do that, got to kind of look back, of course, and see what the week of week 4 offered us in overall value. It was an entertaining week, Munaf. And honestly, I'm riding very, very high off of this team that I love, the San Francisco 49ers team. I can't even say enough good things about them. They're the best in the NFL until you can prove me otherwise.
I can't. I think that we need to start having the conversation of Christian McCaffrey as MVP. I know he's probably going to run away with the Offensive Player of the Year award. What do you have? 4 touchdowns yesterday, was it, Brad?
4.
3 touchdowns.
3 on the ground, 1 through the air.
Yeah, so I think that, again, right now there's a significant difference between the San Francisco 49ers and what they're doing this season, and I think the rest of the league. I know there's still a few more undefeated teams left in the NFL, but what the 49ers have done so far this season it's been sweat-free for them, really, and they've been the most dominant team. So at least for you, and I know shout out to Katie Mox, two of the biggest 49ers fans that I know. Hopefully they can continue it going to the rest of the season, and just please keep this team healthy.
Hey, and your team, we'll obviously get to the recap of this later. Your Houston Texans, my friend, they're not too shabby themselves lately. They got themselves a quarterback, my friend.
Yeah, you know what? I think you and I also talked about this on the Propcast. I think I've also mentioned this on the NFL pod as well when we've talked about the Texans or whatever the case might be. But there's always that cliche of the Ohio State quarterbacks not panning out in the NFL. But at least for the first 4 weeks here, CJ Stroud has looked absolutely amazing for this Houston Texans team. Even my dad noticed. He's a more of a pessimistic guy when it comes to his football team, the Texans. But he mentioned to me yesterday, it looks like the Texans finally have their quarterback. I was like, yeah, he looks really good thus far this season. It's only been 4 games, but so far so good. A+ so far for CJ Stroud as a quarterback of the Texans.
looking comfortable. And that's all you can ask out of a rookie, right? I mean, you're not
Right.
putting him in a pressure pack situation to try to get this team to the Super Bowl now. I think the Texans were realistic in their approach and saying, listen, this is rebuild. We know it's rebuild. Come in, do the best you can. We'll be patient with you. And it's shown. I mean, we had it on the propcast as over 1.5 touchdowns for him again, and he delivered.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I think there's a lot of people that were on the Steelers this week. And I know there's some chatter about how if Damian Pierce was going to have a big week for the Texans, and he did. But I mean, that Steelers rush defense right now, it's bottom in the league in most of those statistical categories as far as rush defenses go. And Damian Pierce was able to take advantage of that. So there's a lot more question marks, I think, now for the Steelers. I know we'll get to that game here in a minute with some injury news there, but your team won, my team won. So it's a good week. I'll say that much.
Good week to be us for sure. All right. Well, then, you know what? We'll look behind at the week that was, and we'll do that in a second. But first, let me tell you about Game Time. We're brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets is horrible. It's completely terrible. I hate it. If you guys listen to the NASCAR Gambling Podcast, you know that I usually wait until the very last minute to actually buy tickets. And so sometimes I get gouged. Sometimes I don't know what's going on as far as if I can even attend the show because there may not be tickets left. Game Time takes all of that out, all of that stress, all of that anxiety out of buying last minute tickets. And in fact, they actually reward me for it because they're giving me all of the best deals on these last minute tickets. And they're also going to send them straight to my phone. So I don't have to worry about getting an email later in the spam folder or whatever happens later. And what's more, I get a ticket. And I get a picture of the seat that I'm sitting in, the view that I get right as I'm sitting in my seat. Someday they're going to give me an opportunity to see me sitting in that seat later on enjoying that concert. But until then, just be happy with the fact that you get to see the unobstructed view that you're going to get from the seat that you're sitting in. So make sure that you are buying your tickets with Game Time to have the same type of experience as we have on the SGPN. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code SGPN. You're going to get $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code SGPN for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy has a way to play alongside your favorite football team. And if you're a NASCAR fan, drive along with your favorite drivers all season long. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. And now, until October 4th, few days left for you, Underdog is matching 100% of your first deposit up to $500. Not to mention $100,000 Sundays contest continues on Underdog Fantasy. There's a total of $2 million of prizes all season long, $100,000 in prizes just this week alone. 10 lucky people are going to wake up $10,000 richer just this week. There's a new sweepstake happening every week of the NFL season. We're going to give out some Underdog Fantasy plays on our NASCAR show. Make sure to stick that out as well. So watch along, make your picks, maybe make a little cash over on Underdog's mobile app or website, underdogfantasy.com. When you sign up with the promo code SGPN, Underdog's going to double your first deposit up to $500. That's Underdog Fantasy promo code SGPN. All right, Munaf, week 4 began on Thursday night. It pitted the Detroit Lions against the Green Bay Packers. Little NFC North action on a prime time. Not your typical Thursday night game, as there was 54 points scored in this. The Detroit Lions came in minus 2.5 point favorites, and they took care of the job, 34-20. Not only that, they obliterated the over. The story of this one, Munaf, David frickin' Montgomery. That dude went off for 3 touchdowns. Is it safe to say that the Lions are contenders now in the NFC?
I'm not sure about the NFC because I feel like there's I think there's a gap. I know we just talked about the Niners and I don't think the Cowboys are in that mix right now, but I think it's obviously the 49ers. It's the Eagles, obviously. I know the Cowboys are 3-1. Buccaneers didn't have a lot of expectations, but they are 3-1. You got to, give them credit for that. And then again, the Seahawks at 2-1. I think the one team that we haven't really talked about, the Rams. I know we'll talk about that later, 2-2, with them getting Cooper Kupp back next week as well. I think should be start practicing. But I think for the Lions, I want to see them beat some of the better competition. I know they got it done in week 1 against the Chiefs without Travis Kelce, but I think this team believes. I think you got to give credit to Dan Campbell, the coach for the Lions, and he's gotten these guys to play, for each other, for the coach, and they're playing some good football right now. So I think that they definitely are in the driver's seat right now in that NFC North here, Rod.
You have to think that they're feeling themselves. They come out and knock off the Chiefs, right? The very first game of the season. They win a couple more, and now they're beating the Packers, who, again, played a hell of a game in their own right. Obviously, 20 points for them is not bad against this defense. Jordan Love, 23 of 36 for 246, a touchdown, but 2 interceptions. And then Jared Goff, again, didn't have to do a lot. 19 of 28, 210, a touchdown and an interception. Like I said, the story, though, David Montgomery, 32 carries. In a day where we thought Jahmyr Gibbs was going to make a little bit of a splash because we didn't even know if Montgomery was going to play. Oh, he played all right. 121 yards, 3 touchdowns. Fantasy managers were happy about that.
Yeah, well, I was going to mention that if fantasy managers are happy about it, but how many of them actually started him in their leagues just because he was coming off of that injury? But, I know there was a lot of talk about this Lions team last season with their rushing attack, with DeAndre Swift there and Jamal Williams, who led, I believe, the league in rushing touchdowns last season. Both of those guys gone. So will there be enough to compensate for the losses of those two guys? When they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs fairly high in the first round of the NFL draft this past season, and then you added David Montgomery from the Chicago Bears. So at least for right now, it's been working for the Detroit Lions, and they were able to capitalize against, which is a pretty good Packers rush defense as well. So again, give him a lot of credit, especially David Montgomery, for him, really carrying the scoring load for this Lions team. So again, like I mentioned, in the driver's seat for that NFC North title.
So are we buying the Lions moving forward? Do we think they can continue this momentum? They're going to play Carolina next week. So, this pretty much seems like a slam dunk for them. 3 out of the last 4, obviously they've won. So can they do it against Carolina and Andy Dalton?
A winless Carolina team, right? They're still they're not 0-4 after they take the loss against the Vikings. So Lions by far are the better team right now than the Panthers. Quarterback issues there. I know they drafted Bryce Young number 1 for the Panthers, but I think they can continue rolling here, especially against the Panthers team who looks like they are headed definitely for at least a top 10 pick at minimum in this upcoming draft next season, or next year, I should say.
Green Bay gets Las Vegas. Any love for Green Bay as struggling Vegas too?
Yeah, Vegas has their own quarterback issues as well, right? Jimmy Garoppolo didn't play on Sunday. He didn't clear concussion protocol. They had, I think, Aiden O'Connell that started there. I think it was very curious about what Josh McDaniels said in the post game conference about how he kind of just called out the quarterback, saying that you have to take care of the football, especially for a guy that was inactive for pretty much the entire preseason and the first 3 weeks as well. You got to give some encouraging words to that type of player. There's a lot of dysfunction going on right now with that Raiders organization with the Chandler Jones stuff. Now Devontae Adams thought that he couldn't return with that shoulder injury. He may be out next week as well. So I think it's troubling times right now for the Raiders. So I think the Packers, if they want to stay competitive or at least fight for a playoff spot, they have to go out and take care of business against the poorest teams like the Raiders, who are, again, dealing with the injuries, both at the quarterback position, possibly a wide receiver. Probably the best one in the league in Devontae Adams, or at least top 3 for sure.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Vegas Raiders here in a second, but let's move on to the next game. It was a London special, a Jaguars home game, pretty much by all rights and accounts, because that's just the way they are. They play in London, and that's their home game. But yes, they take care of business 23-7, as you can see on the screen. They were 3-point favorites, where the Jaguars obviously covered that spread. Did not come anywhere near the over-under on this one, which was at 42. And really for Atlanta, all the momentum that they felt like they were building up into this game, they fell flat. 1 touchdown in this entire game. And this team did not look at all like they were any sort of effective. 19 of 31 for Desmond Ridder, 191 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. Bijan was the probably lone bright spot on this squad. 14 for 105. He had a long of 38. Really, Munaf, the Jaguars finally get back to even football. Atlanta comes back down to earth, I guess, after high expectations. What were your takeaways from this one?
Yeah, I think it's when you mentioned it, with Jaguars, it's that they're familiar with going across the pond, right? I think when we talk about routine, that this is something that Jaguars have done for I don't know how many past seasons, going over to London, probably staying at the same hotel. They know how things work, the facilities and all that. And now you have a team like the Atlanta Falcons who have a lot of young players. You have a rookie, quarterback who has been struggling a little bit this season. I know he's been fantastic at home for the Atlanta Falcons, but I think this was an easy, or not, I don't want to say easy, but it was a favorable spot for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, again, like I mentioned, I think they're a far more talented team. We talk about the Travis Etiennes of the world, the Calvin Ridleys of the world, the Christian Kirks, the Trevor Lawrence of the world. And again, Rod, if you didn't bet Drake London to score a touchdown in London, I don't know what you're doing, because, again, he had the lone touchdown for the Atlanta Falcons in this London game.
The storyline was right there. I don't know how you couldn't have done that. So what was it? Do you know what his odds were? His anytime touchdowns odds?
I would guess it would have to be north of 2-1 at minimum, possibly 3-1. I didn't catch what the number was, but I'm guessing it was probably in that neighborhood for an anytime touchdown for him.
I love it. Well, for Travis Etienne, 20 carries, 55 yards, not his best effort. I was actually on him to be better than Bijan in this one, but they didn't really need it. I mean, that was the thing. They jumped out early to 17-0 lead, and I mean, they didn't even really lean on Etienne much at all after that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Atlanta, I mean, there's still some growing pains there with the offense and what Arthur Smith wants to run. I mean, Bijan, like you mentioned, had a great game. Tyler Algier seems like he's kind of taking a step back. I mean, when you draft Bijan Robinson as high as the Falcons did for the right reasons, I think they're still going through some growing pains there. But this was a game that the Jacksonville Jaguars needed, right? They got beat by Texans in week 3, going across the pond. If they want to stay competitive in that AFC South division, with now the Texans at 2-2, Titans got a big victory out on their home field. Jaguars got the victory in London, like we just talked about, and the Colts just fell a little bit short, come from behind in overtime. So, and falling to the Rams. But again, this was a big win for the Jacksonville Jaguars in this game.
Yeah, they needed it. I mean, mostly everybody was high on Jacksonville coming into the season after what they did last year. So, I mean, to come out 2-2, right, having lost 2 in a row, it's a little embarrassing. So you did need to get right, especially against a team like the Falcons, who you were expected to beat anyways. Next week, though, a little bit tougher. They're going to have a week 5 matchup against the Buffalo Bills. This one's going to be tough, Munaf. This is the test now. This is where they can prove whether or not they belong in the conversation as an AFC contender.
Yeah, huge game, obviously, against the Bills, who have been just scoring at will since week 1. I mean, week 2, they put up, 35-plus points. Week 3, they did it again. Week 4, we saw what happened. And we'll talk about that game here in a minute against the Bills, 48, or against the Dolphins, 48 points they put up in that game. So I know there were some question marks about this Bills team going up against the Jets in week 1 after the whole Aaron Rodgers injury, but they've bounced back very, very nicely over the last 3 weeks. And again, for the Jaguars, if they want to stay competitive, they want to, make themselves known in the AFC, you gotta compete with the big boys. So this was going to be a big test for them in week 5.
I know they've got that circled. For the Falcons, they go on to take on your Texans. This one, if you would have looked at the schedule early, you probably would have tipped the cap to the Atlanta Falcons. Now, not so much. I'm thinking Houston might get themselves another win here and go above 500.
Playing good football right now are the Texans, obviously, over the last 2 weeks. I know week 1, they had a tough matchup against the Baltimore Ravens on the road. That's always a tough situation for a rookie head coach and a rookie quarterback. But, I think we talked about this on the podcast as well. Since the 2018 season, the Texans haven't lost in Jacksonville. That came into fruition again this week. Had an incredible performance against the Steelers team in week 4 here. So this is gonna be a good. It's gonna be a good battle between some young talent on both sides of the for both teams here. We talked about the talent that the Falcons have. Texans with C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins, who has looked absolutely amazing. Tank Dell, Damian Pierce. So the defense has looked really good as well. So DeMeco Ryans has this Texans team playing well. So it's going to be a fun matchup to watch. And Rod, the line is indicative. It's -1. You kind of got it either way for this team. So it's going to be a fun matchup to watch between these two teams. Maybe not a game that a lot of people have on their screens, but obviously I will definitely be watching this one.
Yeah, well, you will for sure. I think that local TV is going to give that one to you. So, yeah, for sure. And if you have the ticket, then of course you're going to probably meander over there, or at least put it on one of your screens. All right, we turn our attention now to look at. So Miami goes and throws 70 points up on Denver, right? Turns around, gives up 48 to Buffalo. I think as Miami fans, you have to wonder what the hell this team's identity is. Miami 3-1 now on the season, losing their first game against the Bills, who are also 3-1. Our Buffalo 2.5-point favorites on this one, covered that spread. The over/under was 52, not even a question between these two teams. Ended up being a 68-point total on this one. But for Miami, right, you come out feeling fantastic after throwing 70 points up on the board. You think you're unstoppable. Buffalo proves otherwise.
This was a big game for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, we just mentioned that they took a week 1 loss in a division game against the Jets. You didn't want to drop another division game here, but I feel like the Dolphins always struggle in Buffalo for whatever reason that might be. And again, I think this was going to be a flat spot for the Dolphins after obviously putting up 70 points at home against the Denver Broncos. I think this was a smash spot for the Bills. I know a lot of our guys were on the Bills for this game, taking the -2.5. But yeah, they got the job done, and it was fairly early that they got the job done. They got out to a quick touchdown, took a 7-0 lead. I know the Dolphins answered back, but after that, I mean, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs has absolutely had a huge game for the Buffalo Bills. Gabe Davis, our guy, gets the opening touchdown for the Buffalo Bills. But it just wasn't enough for this Miami Dolphins team. Again, I should have had the stat in front of me, but I think teams that scored 50+ points the previous week, I believe, are like 1-7 against the spread, something like that the following week. I'll try to look it up in the meantime here. But yeah, a big win for the Bills. They get another a division win. And again, the Bills are looking like the team a lot of us expected them to be coming into the season, as one of the Super Bowl contenders or Super Bowl odds-on favorites, I should say, for this season here, Rod.
Buffalo going into the half 31-14, up 31-14. That's a score. That's a normal score for most games. And Buffalo just basically said, we're not done yet. I mean, we still got, 17 points in us to score on you after the break and hold you to only 6. So really dominant performance by Buffalo. No one's surprised. I mean, at this point, no one is surprised. I know that there was a lot of panicking when Buffalo did lose their game, but I mean, it's the Bills, and they're going to continue to be one of the better teams in the AFC, and again, a contender for the entire AFC. All Miami has to do now is turn around and prove that this was a fluke and that they were sort of punch drunk and that they can continue to beat the good teams in this league, because they have too many weapons to not be able to contend.
Yeah. I mean, look, this Dolphins team, I think a lot of times we talk about how great Tua has been at the quarterback position, and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and that running game. But I feel like sometimes we forget that Mike McDaniel has been the genius behind this offense. And I think that he's not getting enough credit. I believe he probably is right now the odds-on favorite to win Coach of the Year. I know Tua was up there as well for MVP, but this may have just been a fluke in a bad spot here for the Dolphins, but I have no doubt this team will bounce back for the rest of the season. Again, they will welcome Buffalo later in the season down to us in South Beach in Miami to kind of avenge this loss here.
What better way to bounce back than a game against the Giants for Miami? It seems like it was almost a nice little cushion for them after the fall to get the Giants. Now, I know Giants are scrappy, but if this Miami team wants to prove that they can keep beating good teams, they got to beat the bad ones, and the Giants are definitely not among the best in the league right now.
Yep, 100%.
So, and then for Buffalo, they will turn around and turn their attention to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, again, Jaguars, we talked about it just a second ago, have to prove that they're going to be able to hang with the big dogs as well. So a lot of proving going on this season. Munaf, I feel like teams have to prove themselves quite a bit.
Yeah, I think, again, and I keep mentioning it for the Bills, the last 3 weeks, I don't think has been a fluke because we know what this offense is capable of, right? Josh Allen has absolutely just turned it around after throwing 3 interceptions in the week 1 against the Jets defense. But again, like I mentioned, they've scored 38, 37, 48 over the last 3 weeks here. And again, I think I'm not saying they have to go out and score 30 points every single game, but I think that they have the offensive weapons to go out and do that, led by Stephon Diggs. And again, James Cook has been a big pickup for them in the draft. I know Dameon Pierce hasn't been as heavily involved for this team, but again, for this Buffalo Bills team, for them to kind of get over that hump, they got to continue playing good football like they have been, for the rest of the season. Again, when it matters the most in the playoffs, I think this Buffalo Bills team will be ready to go.
Speaking of getting over the hump, the next game we'll cover is the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Carolina Panthers. Minnesota needed this. They needed to beat somebody. They came out so flat on this season. Many people were putting Minnesota up at the top of the list. You want to talk about having to prove? Minnesota had to prove, and this is the one game that they needed to win because, again, Carolina came in 0-3. So did they. They had to walk away with a win out of this because Carolina is not the kind of team you want to lose to if you want to be in the conversation as one of the better teams in your division, let alone your conference. So Minnesota did just that. They took care of business. They came in 4-point favorites over the Panthers. They did beat them 21-13. The over-under on this one was 46. It was 44. So the under was in play, or 34 rather. So the under was well in play here. Look, there's not much to say about this game, honestly, other than even in a win, Kirk Cousins still did not look impressive. 12-19, 139, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Did that reality show, did the NFL quarterback show kind of set him up for failure this year?
I don't think it's set up for failure, but I think one thing we also need to point out here is that the opening drive, Minnesota was driving down the field, and then Wap right in the end zone, right at the goal line, he throws a 99-yard interception return by the Panthers, and we're like, oh boy, here we go. But again, give credit to the Vikings for fighting back here after that blunder by Kirk Cousins. Nothing that we're not used to seeing from Kirk Cousins. But again, they were able to, score enough points, I guess we should say, against this Panthers team and get their first victory of the season, because a lot of people were, expecting this Vikings teams to regress, right? Because just of the amount of one-score victories they had last season, the whole Pythagorean theory, and again, regression, right? Because if you're going to win one-score games, it's probably going to regress back to you. It's going to be balancing out the following season. I think we saw that, at least through the first 3 weeks for the Minnesota Vikings. But again, a much needed victory for the Vikings. They get it done. They go to 1-3. And now the Panthers, again, like we talked about earlier, is that there wasn't a lot of expectations coming in with this team. Yeah, you still, you hire Frank Reich as a head coach there, but I think there were going to be some growing pains with Bryce Young and lack there of talent around him. So I think the foundation is really there for this Panthers team, but I think they're probably going to be in that conversation of having a top 3, 4, 5 pick for this upcoming draft as well. So again, a victory that the Vikings need to get, and they get the job done.
They could be another Jaguars team where they have to just keep building year after year after year with these first round picks, these top picks in the draft, and just continue to build a team until they start winning. So Bryce Young, 25 of 32, 204. We talked about CJ Stroud having a soft cushion to land on in Houston. Bryce Young had about the same thing, but as the first overall pick, that cushion gets a little bit harder because people are expecting a lot more out of you to turn the team around. So again, for these two teams, Minnesota, they got to continue to play well. They've got to continue to try to win. They will move their attention next week to sorry, my click did not work. To the Kansas City Chiefs. That's a tough test for them.
Yep.
Don't know that they're going to get it done against the Chiefs. Although, I don't know. After last night, who knows? We'll see. And then, of course, the Panthers get the Detroit Lions. That's going to be a bloodbath. So keep your eyes peeled for that one.
Yeah, tough test, obviously, for the Vikings, welcoming the Kansas City Chiefs led by Patrick Mahomes in that offense. So I think that if you want to look at a bet, at least for week 5, maybe take a look at the team total over for the Kansas City Chiefs, because I feel like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are going to have their way or against this Minnesota Vikings defense. Now, Rod, the biggest question now for the Chiefs is going to be, is Taylor Swift going to be in attendance in Minnesota? That's the question now where that comes behind this Kansas City Chiefs team. Nothing on the football field, but do we expect Taylor Swift to be in attendance for the rest of the games for the regular season for the Kansas City Chiefs?
And if she does, what other celebrities does she bring with her? Because remember, it wasn't just her; it was everybody else that was in there.
Yeah.
Blake Lively, Sabrina Carpenter. I mean, we're getting to be a star-studded team over there in Kansas City. So I don't know. I mean, if we take a bet, I'm going to take the under on whatever number you throw out there, because I don't think she's going to make it to every single game.
Hey man, there's right now 2-0 with Taylor Swift in attendance. So again, I think that if she makes it out to Minnesota, they get the job done there. and she attends every game for the rest of the season, I don't think the Chiefs may lose another game for the rest of the regular season at least, but we shall see.
Oh, for the love of God, the Taylor Swift effect. Well, a team that is really hoping that they find their Taylor Swift is the Chicago Bears. They are now 0-4 after. Listen, I feel bad for the Bears, right? You come into this thinking this team just got clobbered 70 to like nothing. I mean, I know it wasn't nothing, but that's probably what it felt like. You're like, we can handle this team. We're on the rise. We're feeling good. You jump out to a 21-7 lead in the half, and then you go and piss it away. Denver ends up winning this one 31-28. Denver was 3-point favorites coming into this. So the push was in. Over under was 46. They just killed the over. I don't know how many people were probably on the over on this game. Probably didn't think there was going to be too many points scored, but again, Denver finally gets their first win. Chicago still searching for it. When do you hit the panic button in Chicago?
I think now is the time. I think you got to press that button right now for the Chicago Bears, because I think this was the opportunity for the Chicago Bears to get a victory at home against the Denver Broncos, who were, right, like you mentioned, that gave up 70 points to the Miami Dolphins a week before, and they were in the driver's seat. I mean, look, they were up 28-7, 21-7 at the half, and Justin Fields looked like Patrick Mahomes out there in that first half. I mean, he finished the game, 28 of 35, 335 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did have that one pick at the end when they were trying to get the game-tying field goal, and he had a fumble as well. But I think right now for the Bears, it's, is Justin Fields the answer for us at that quarterback position? I think that's what the question right now is for a lot of fans of Chicago, maybe the front office as well. Because again, there's a new shiny toy in Caleb Williams that is playing out of USC, was playing out of his mind right now. I think if the season ended today, I think I saw that the Bears would have the first and second overall pick for this upcoming draft, if I'm not mistaken, at least the number one for sure. So they would definitely have to consider taking Caleb Williams there with the struggles that Justin Fields has prior to this game. At least from, a winning standpoint. He could put up the stats. We know that. We talked a lot about that on the Propcast, Rod, about him rushing yards and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, you got to win football games to be successful in this league, and he just hasn't been able to do that thus far in his career.
I don't want to say that I feel like San Francisco dodged a bullet. I was preaching to the choirs everywhere that Justin Fields needed to be a San Francisco 49er. I wonder if things would have been different for him had he ended up there. But hey, listen, I'm okay with our Mr. Irrelevant right now. He's doing us some good. But Justin Fields, 28-35, 335, 4 touchdowns. That's a stat line that Carolina would have liked. That's a stat line that many teams would have liked. Russell Wilson, 21-28, 233, and 3 touchdowns. Russell's cooking. But yeah, I mean, this game closer than I think most folks wanted out of the Chicago Bears, and I think they would have wanted this to hold on for a little bit longer and maybe call it after the third quarter.
Yeah, I mean, I think the opportunity was there for them to, get a 4 touchdown lead possibly. But again, the fumble changed the complexion of that game, and give credit to the Denver Broncos. I mean, they fought back, got their first victory of the season. Again, obviously somebody was going to win this football game unless it ended in a tie, but Denver gets the job done. Russell Wilson, I think it was to Marvin Mims, if I'm not mistaken, that had a huge 48-yard completion in that fourth quarter to get them that into field goal range and get the field goal. And again, give credit to the defense. They get the interception that they needed at the end to secure their first victory. But again, the question marks now become for the Chicago Bears is what is the future of Justin Field, not only for this season, but at least for the foreseeable future after the season as well.
You're not mad if you took Chicago plus the 3. So I guess consider that a small win for you. They go to Washington. They got to do something. I mean, this Washington team is not the greatest either. So it's which bad teams can you beat at this point, or are you just tanking for Caleb?
Yeah, that's a big way. I mean, look, Caleb, I'm watching a lot more college football, especially USC, and Caleb Williams just looks like he's just a man among boys right now, playing that quarterback position for USC.
He does indeed. Denver moving on to take on the Jets at home. I mean, we saw what the Jets did last night against Kansas City. Does Denver stand a chance against this newly minted Zach Wilson offense?
Well, this is the game that I think both of these teams have circled after what transpired in the comments between Nathaniel or what Sean Payton said about Nathaniel Hackett. So I think that both the Jets have this one circled, the Denver Broncos have this one circled. So look, Zach Wilson looked pretty good out there on Sunday Night Football. I know he had the fumble at the end that kind of cost him the game, but I think we have to give Russell Wilson, Zach Wilson the credit for how he's kind of conducted himself in interviews and things like that. I know that he hasn't been a great quarterback. I think that's putting it nicely for this Jets team. But I mean, he's taking accountability. I don't know if people have seen the video of him saying, I lost this game on that fumble. My fault, guys. But again, you got to give him credit for the way he played last night in this game against the Kansas City Chiefs. It was closer than a lot of people expected. I know Patrick Mahomes stepped out at the end. He made the winning football play, but that was the difference between the Chiefs covering or the Jets covering. But I like what I saw from this Jets team because they got down 17-0 early in that game. They fought their way back to at least they tied the game up, and the Chiefs took the field goal lead and were able to hold on. But give credit to this the Jets team for the way that they fought back on Sunday Night Football.
Indeed, we'll cover that game in a second as well. Let's move on to the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Cleveland Browns. Holy cow. This one, look, the takeaway from this, Munaf, is Cleveland bad, Baltimore good. And it's just not even a question anymore. Cleveland, I know they're 2-2 right now, but that record does not belie how absolutely horrendous it is to watch this team play football. Baltimore, on the other hand, 3-1, not necessarily even an impressive 3-1, to be honest with you. It's not like they've gotten there in a flashy way, but they've just gritted and grind their way to a 3-1 record. Like I said, beating the Browns 28-3. The over-under on this one, 38, nowhere close. Baltimore 1-point favorite, so obviously definitely covered that one. But I don't even know if I want to spend a whole lot of time covering this game. Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback, 19 of 36, 121 yards, 3 interceptions, a QB rating of 25.3. Ouch, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was obviously the news at the quarterback position for the Cleveland Browns, right? Because it seemed like all indications were that Sean Watson was going to play, but they did make the change, or I guess he wasn't able to go on Sunday. They had to put in DTR, but again, this was a tough spot for him in a division game at home, going up against the Baltimore Ravens, who, like you mentioned, haven't been overly impressive, but they got the job done here. And again, they were dealing with their own injuries, where the Baltimore Ravens, especially at the wide receiver position on the offensive line, they've had some injuries there as well. But for the Browns, it was a tough start to the season in the first 4 weeks because they had 3 division games in those first 4 weeks, right? They got the week 1 victory against the Bengals in that monsoon. They fell a little bit short against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I believe that was a Sunday Night Football game. Then in week 4, they fell here to the Baltimore Ravens with the injury at the quarterback position. But I guess, yeah, like you mentioned, not a lot for me to take away here. Again, Baltimore got the job done where they needed to. They covered the game. And, they're moving on to next week. They are now 3-1, are the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, Baltimore, 296 of total yards in offense in this game. I want to go back to the guy that told us we were stupid for picking Lamar Jackson to go under his passing total. 186 yards this week. So far on track to not only go under his passing total, but not even come close to half of his passing total. So shows what you guys think we know. Definitely not mad about that at all. But yeah, 3-1 for Baltimore, 2-2 for Cleveland. I mean, does Cleveland even try anymore? Like what's left for Cleveland after this week? And is Deshaun Watson even going to be healthy moving forward? They get San Francisco next week, by the way. So
yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're only 1 game back in that division. I know, again, they played, I think, a very tough schedule to start the season, obviously, like I mentioned, with the 3 division games. But, after the Niners, they have the Colts, they have the Seahawks, the Cardinals, they play the Ravens and the Steelers again. So it looks like at least they have a couple games that, that are winnable for them. But every win is going to matter in that AFC North division. I know the Bengals have fallen off a little bit here, but I think it's going to be I think there's still an opportunity for the Browns to possibly get this division here just because of the struggles that the Bengals are having. And now we'll talk about the Steelers and their quarterback issue and the injury that, Kenny Pickett suffered with the knee injury. But I think the opportunity is still in front of them right now. Obviously, the Ravens are in the driver's seat for this AFC North division. But again, for the Browns, you got the best team coming into your building next week. I think that's going to be very, very tough for them to slow down this 49ers team. But I just don't want to count out the Browns just yet here, Rod.
Yeah, and before we get everybody going, well, it's not next week. Yeah, Cleveland does have a bye next week. They'll come in week 6 against the 49ers. So, just want to spell any trolls out there that are already like, oh, you don't know. But for Baltimore, they take on Pittsburgh, and like you talked about, and we'll talk about them actually right now. They're having their own issues now. Pittsburgh beaten by Houston 30-6. And it was a 2-point favorite for Pittsburgh, 2.5-point favorite for Pittsburgh, depending on the places. Obviously, Houston way more than covered that, over under of 41. The under hits here as well. But listen, there's a lot to feel good about in Houston, not equally as much in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think the conversation here is about the quarterback position for both teams, right? Obviously, Kenny Pickett has mightily struggled through the first 4 weeks. And is it his fault or is it Matt Canada? Because again, this offense has just not looked very good despite them being 2-2 through the first 4 weeks here. But Matt Canada is an absolute thorn in this offense, especially with the talent that they do have, right? I'm not sure what's going on with Najee, but he's still more than a capable running back. I mean, he still had a pretty good game here, 14 rushes, 71 yards to 23 a 23-yard rush. That was his longest. And also he had 1 reception for 32 yards as well for the Steelers offense. Again, we've talked a lot about Jalen Warren on the propcast as well. He was also contributing in the backfield for this Steelers offense. But I know they're missing Deontay Johnson, but George Pickens, I think, is more than capable of filling into that void with Deontay Johnson being sidelined for the time being. But it's really that offensive coordinator position that right now is really, putting a thorn in that offense. And for the Texans, we're excited about CJ Stroud. He's looked really good through the first 4 weeks of the regular season, yet to throw an interception for this offense just yet. And again, he's making quick decisions. I think you mentioned that as well, is that his decision-making has been really, really good. Nico Collins has looked absolutely phenomenal for this Texans wide receiving group. We talked a lot about it, and I've talked a lot about Tank Dell as well. Damian Pierce, I know, got off to a rough start for their first 3 weeks because they went up against a very, very difficult rush defense schedule for those first 3 weeks, but he had his way against his Pittsburgh Steelers rush defense. And was I surprised to see them blow this team out? I honestly was, because I thought this would be a game that they would lose. But proud as a Texans fan, you got to be proud of the way these guys are going out there and competing every single week. So a huge victory for the Texans. But now Pittsburgh with the quarterback position, looks like Kenny Pickett is going to be missing some time. So which interests us since in the conversation of Mitch Trubisky, if he's going to be able to lead this team here, Rod.
I was just about to say it's Mitch Trubisky time again. As much as people want to give up on this guy, he continues to surface. So be interested to see that. Nico Collins caught 7 of CJ Stroud's passes, 168 of Stroud's 306 yards, and both of his passing touchdowns. Big fantasy day for Nico Collins. So yeah, I don't know what the answer is in Pittsburgh, but I don't know if it's Mitch Trubisky. We'll see how that pans itself out. Let's move on to the Rams and the Colts. This was a more entertaining game than I think a lot of people thought it was going to be, where the Rams end up beating the Colts 29-23. The Rams only 1-point favorites in this one. Of course, it did take overtime, as the crawler says over here, for that to happen. The over-under on this one, 44.5. Definitely the over hit. But again, the Rams, as much as everybody wants them to be either bad or good, it feels like they're both, and they're both in the same game half the time, where they can be good like they were in the first half of this game, and then not so good as they were in the second half, barely being able to pull it out at the end against a Colts team, again, that's being led by a rookie quarterback. And so what do you do at this point?
Yeah, I think like you nailed it, Rod, that the Rams got out to a convincing lead in that first half. They were up 20-0, and they just led the Colts get back into the game. I think it was late fourth quarter or third quarter where there was a 4th and 1. And they just started running the football where, Matthew Stafford was getting whatever he wanted through the air against his Colts team. And again, the opposing quarterbacks that have faced the Colts have had a lot of success against, this past defense for the Indianapolis Colts. And again, for the Rams, it's difficult to say what the identity of this team is, because a lot of expectations of this team coming into the year was that, this might be a year where, Matthew Stafford falls off. He's a year older. And Aaron Donald has been contemplating retirement. Deshaun McVay still have it. Oh, then, the hamstring injury with Cooper Kupp. But now you're sitting at 2-2. You're getting Cooper Kupp back. I mean, there's a possibility that they could be competing at least for a wild card spot. At San Francisco, we know is going to run away with this division that's sitting at 4-0 and how easy their schedule is. But I think we got to start having the conversation that this Rams team may just be able to sneak into the playoffs with the way they have played at least through the first 4 weeks. I know it's a 2-2 record, but give credit to Sean McVay and how he's been able to utilize the weapons that he has without Cooper Kupp and at least translated to a 2-2 record thus far here, Rod.
Well, and we know this offense can sustain a 2 wide receiver set. We saw Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp getting a lot of action when they were together. So, I mean, now they've got 3. They've got Atwell, they've got Nakua, and they've got Kupp coming back. That's going to be a dangerous trio. They get to face the Falcons, though, and put a lot of that to the test, and that's next week's game for them. I don't know. Are they ready for the Falcons?
I think they will be. Again, for this Colts team, we talk about, typically that rookie quarterback struggle, especially them just being thrown into the fire without having a year to, I guess, sit behind a veteran quarterback and just learn the offensive, playing game plan, their respective team, or just learning the NFL way, right? Jordan Love, what was, a guy that was behind Aaron Rodgers for so many years. I think the best example I can give you is that Patrick Mahomes, when he was drafted in that same draft as Deshaun Watson, like they sat him that first year, and he was behind Alex Smith for that first year. And I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes couldn't have gone out for that first year and did what he did or he has been doing, but I think there's something to it when quarterbacks coming out of the college ranks are just thrown into the fire versus them getting a year holding the clipboard and learning. I think there's a significant difference between that. But again, Jonathan Taylor back at practice. Is that going to make a difference for a rookie quarterback? You bet your ass it is, because Jonathan Taylor, when healthy and playing, he's one of the better running backs in this league, top 3, top 5 for sure. I think that'll take some pressure off of this offense, especially having Anthony Richardson as your quarterback. Having to rely on him, not only using his arm, but also his legs. I know he was already in the concussion protocol after the week 2 victory they had against Houston Texans. But getting Jonathan Taylor back, I think definitely will help this offense.
Help it against the Tennessee Titans next week, hopefully for them. So I think that's a very winnable game for them to be able to jump up to 3-2 on the season. Let's move over to Tampa Bay. They surprisingly, can I just not talk about these guys? Because I was so off on Baker Mayfield.
I think everybody was.
I know, right? And all he does is go 25 of 32, 246 yards, 3 touchdowns. He does throw a pick, but dominates this New Orleans Saints team. Now Tampa Bay 3-1. I mean, it's really Tom Who in this, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were 4.5 or 4-point underdogs in this, so they end up covering this. Over under was 40 points. Score 26-9, nowhere near it. But I'm not ready to crown the Buccaneers as a good team. I just feel like they've played above themselves and found themselves in good situations. And now, of course, the schedule is not going to get any easier for them. But they beat two okay teams and lost to a good one. So we'll see what they do next week against Detroit.
Yeah. It'll be a week 6 matchup for Detroit, for the Buccaneers against Detroit. They have a bye week in week 5, but I think for the Saints, again, we talked about the Derek Carr injury and how much is that affecting Derek Carr with the shoulder injury. But again, Baker, I think, is defying the odds right now, just because everybody thought. And again, I'm with you, Rod. I was completely wrong about this team as well. But look, they've beaten the Bears, but who hasn't? They got a surprising week 1 victory against the Minnesota Vikings. Like you mentioned, they fell short against the Philadelphia Eagles, but in a division game, where it seems like the Buccaneers always have the number of the Saints team, but they were able to get the job done. So they get the Lions in week 6, followed by the Falcons at home, and then it gets a little tough against the Bills. So we'll find out really the identity of this Buccaneers team over the next couple of weeks here.
Yep, we're about to find out the identity of New Orleans team, as everybody had high hopes for Derek Carr coming into it. They get to play New England next week. We'll see how that pans out for them. let's turn our attention now to Washington taking on Philadelphia. Ooh, if you're a Philadelphia fan, you were sweating this one a lot as the Eagles pulling out in overtime against the Commanders, 34-31. Philadelphia, 8.5-point favorites on this one. So if you took Washington in the points, you were thrilled. Over under on this one was 43.5. You were happy again if you took the over on this one. But I know Philly's 4-0, but I feel like they've had to fight for that 4-0. I don't feel like it's been handed to them like everybody thought it was going to be in the season. They've had some pretty close games. In fact, all but one of them have been, I think, too close for their comfort.
Yeah, and I think the biggest question right now for this Eagles team is the injuries that they have in the secondary because, they've given up the points at least 3 out of the first 4 weeks, right? I think right now when we kind of go back and look at Patriots scoring 20 points against that Eagles team, it seems like an overachievement for the Patriots on what they've been, not been able to do this season. Week 2, Kirk Cousins prime time. I know we know the narrative there. They got the backdoor cover, but then they played the Buccaneers. Okay, Baker Mayfield, and then again against the Commanders, who led by Sam Howell was able to have success in this game, where he didn't have any mistakes. He didn't throw any interceptions. 29-41, 290 yards for him. Scary Terry, 8 receptions, 86 yards. But as great of an offensive team the Eagles are, there's definitely a lot of questions for this team on the defensive side of the football, especially in the secondary now for this Commanders team as the 8.5-point underdog to force overtime the way they did at that end of the game and had an opportunity to win it as well. I think there, again, for this Eagles team, there are going to be definitely some question marks on the defensive side.
Definitely some question marks on the defensive side. But for Washington, they get a nice little cushion to fall on. They get the Bears next week. So that should be, if they played the Eagles the way they played the Eagles, they should definitely handle the Bears. I know they're not going to look ahead to the next week after that. But, again, the Bears should be a pretty easy opponent to defeat. And then, of course, the Eagles get the Rams, which we just talked about the Rams and how, surprisingly well they're going to be doing, I think, as they get Cooper Kupp back in the fold. So I don't know. I don't know if 4-1 is in the cards for the Eagles, but we'll see how they stack up against the Rams.
Yeah, that's going to be a good game to watch, especially if they do get Cooper Kupp back. So that's going to be a fun game to watch. I think we'll find a lot about this Rams team against this Eagles team. So definitely going to be looking forward to that one, Rod.
I agree. Some game that a lot of folks weren't looking forward to was the Tennessee Titans taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. Got to tell you, this is all this preseason talk about the Bengals being Super Bowl contenders. Again, I think we can quietly put that to bed at this point. They are 1-3, losing 27-3 to the Tennessee Titans. And this game was ugly. The Bengals scored a field goal on their first score of the game and did not score anything since. Joe Burrow, 20 of 30, 165 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. But that injury is playing havoc with this quarterback, and Munaf, they're not doing anything to address it, in my opinion.
It's a slippery slope right now for the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Because I think there was some optimism that they did get the victory in week 3 as the first win of the season. You're thinking that you go up against a Titans team that their secondary has been so bad that maybe Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase would be able to take advantage of that, but they just simply weren't able to. And like you mentioned, that calf injury, if it's not rested from the things that I've read, I'm not sure if it's going to get worse, but I think it could lead to other injuries as well for Joe Burrow. So it's now a very tough hill to climb for the Cincinnati Bengals team, especially like we talked about being that AFC North division where the Steelers, okay, they have a quarterback change now. Maybe that sparks the team. You have a Ravens team that's 3-1. Browns haven't fallen off of the face of the earth yet, but now sitting at 1-3, it's going to be a tough hill to climb for the Cincinnati Bengals team. And again, for this offense to only score 3 points, where we're just so used to see them putting up 3 touchdowns in the blink of an eye. They do get a break next week against the Cardinals, but again, the Cardinals team has been a little bit feisty, especially at home. We saw what they did against the Cowboys in week 3. But again, if you're a Bengals fan, you definitely are a little bit concerned right now, especially with the injury to Joe Burrow.
Indeed, Cincinnati was 2.5 favorites against Tennessee. Obviously, that was not the case. And then Tennessee and Cincinnati with the over-under 41.5. 30 points scored in this game. You look for the Bengals. We talked about it. It's just they're going to have to do something, and they're do something quick because their season's going to slip out of hand if they continue to slide. For Tennessee, I mean, look, they're 2-2 right now, and they get the Colts. So, not necessarily a slam dunk for either one of these teams. It's going to be a pretty decent contest going forward.
Yeah. Tennessee, they take care of business at home. And under Mike Vrabel, they're especially in an underdog role. They actually have been a very profitable team. So, and again, being in that AFC South division where it seems like every win now has to matter because you have three teams that are, I believe, 2-2, with the Texans, the Colts, and every team is 2-2 in that AFC South division. So again, every game is going to matter if you want to win that AFC South division, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about the NFC South last year and how that was a mess, and everybody was clumped around each other around that one. So looking about the same in the AFC South this season as well. All right, let's turn our attention to the AFC West, rather. Oh, well, we'll say hello to our buddy Zhang Li. Joe Burrow under rushing yard props are easy money. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you can't scramble anymore at that point, so you're absolutely right. I think books are going to get wise to that, Zhang. I think this is going to be one of those instances where they're going to figure out and tighten up those lines on us. But, yeah, milk them while you can at this point. All right, AFC West, the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. Of course, I live in Las Vegas Raiders country out here in Northern California. Lots of angry Las Vegas Raiders fans still. Stop me if you've heard this one, Niner fans. Jimmy Garoppolo not able to play a football game. I don't know what it is about that guy. Just cannot stay on the field at all. Aiden O'Connell comes in as the backup. He actually outduels Justin Herbert as far as what it is. 24-39 for O'Connell, 238 yards. Did not get a touchdown in this one. Did throw an interception. Justin Herbert, on the other hand, 13-24, 167 yards and a touchdown. But the Chargers come out on top, 24-17. Chargers were 6-point favorites in this one. So the Chargers won and covered. And then, of course, the over-under 49 on this one, under hit on this one. But Munaf, Las Vegas had some high hopes when they brought in Jimmy G. Now they just want to survive. They're 1-3.
Yeah, this was a tough one for the Raiders because, again, there was an opportunity for them to tie this game up because Brian Staley went for it, I believe, on 4th and 1 with a quarterback sneak with Justin Herbert late in that fourth quarter to kind of steal the game, but Justin Herbert wasn't able to get there, and there was an opportunity again for the Raiders to go down and tie it up. Unfortunately, Aiden O'Connell threw that interception. I believe it was on 3rd and goal or 4th and goal. I believe it was 3rd and goal because I was watching this game for them to tie it up. And again, they didn't get Devontae Adams involved until I believe that fourth quarter, honestly, because I had his props to go over. The receptions did get there, but he fell, I think, 2 yards short of him getting over his yardage production or his yardage projection. But I mean, you've mentioned it with the Raiders. There's going to come a point where I think Devontae Adams is going to one out because he was just so used to winning football games when he was with Aaron Rodgers. But now it's a completely opposite story with the Raiders. And again, Josh McDaniels just makes you just scratch your head on some of the decisions that he did make. I think it was last week against the Steelers where he kicked a field goal where he was inside the 10-yard line in 4th and goal. He needed a touchdown to tie the game up, but he decides to kick the field goal. But low IQ head coach. We heard about all the Chandler Jones stuff that was going on. He's finally got released by this team after, I think, kind of forcing his way out because he just didn't want to be there. But for this Chargers team, fortunately for them to get the victory there, did suffer an injury to Justin Herbert's left hand. I think he got stepped on by a defensive player of the Raiders. I think it's like a fractured finger, if I'm not mistaken, but it's on his non-throwing hand. They already said that they don't expect him to miss any time here, but fortunate for the Chargers to get out with a victory here. They can move on to the next game.
And even more fortunately, they got a week off, and then they'll come back and meet Dallas at their own place. So Herbert does get a chance to rest that hand. For Las Vegas, they get Green Bay, and they get a fired-up Green Bay team next week. They don't have time to rest, so they will be playing Green Bay on the 9th. So that is going to be a Monday night affair, if I'm not mistaken, if my dates are correct. Yep, Monday night is the 9th.
Yep.
So they'll be on Monday Night Football against Green Bay. Whether or not Jimmy's back, we'll see. But again, they're going to have to fight and scrap for everything they get. All right, let's move on to the Dallas Cowboys winners decisively over the New England Patriots. Dallas now 3-1, beating the Patriots 38-3. Absolutely no fight in this Patriots team. Mac Jones, 12 of 21, 150 yards, 2 interceptions. Of course, Dallas came in as 5.5-point favorites on this one, and the over under 43.5. So the under in play here, as well as the Dallas cover. But I mean, look, it's Dallas. They're kind of slowly marching their way through their schedule, and they've just kind of beaten the teams they need to beat. And obviously, with that one embarrassment in Arizona out of the way, now they can feel free to do whatever they need to. But next week's a different story. We'll get to that in a second. But this game was never even in question for me, Munaf.
No, this Patriots team's just not very good. I mean, there's no better way to put it. I think that, people are starting to have the conversation, is Bill Belichick an overrated head coach now, or did Tom Brady just put a Band-Aid over how bad some of the talent was around him for a lot of the years when he was with New England? But Mac Jones, I just think that, again, if you look at his body language, it just seems like he just doesn't want to be there for this Patriots team. And again, he had a fumble on his own 5-yard line. Defense just picked it up, just walked it into the end zone. This offense is not very good. Ramondre Stevenson's having a tough season. The wide receivers for this Patriots team are not very good. And the Cowboys took care of business against a bad team, where we thought that, again, this Cowboys team, after the victory or the loss that they suffered against the Cardinals, that, hey, this team might not be very good as people that anticipated coming into the season, but they took care of business against a Patriots team that's just not very good. So, yeah, I mean, I really didn't have much else for this game. It's just this Patriots team might just make a quarterback change with Bailey Zappi, possibly.
It's got to be somebody. I mean, I'm sure there's some USFL guys that are looking for NFL chances, so might as well bring them up as well. New England gets New Orleans. That's not going to be one that I'm going to want to put on my red zone grid at all, so I'll ignore that one. And then, of course, like I said, Dallas gets San Francisco. That will be, my friends, my Super Bowl, because that is the rivalry that dominates my household, by the way. My wife is a Dallas Cowboys fan, where I am a Niners fan. So, yep.
Now, did you know that prior to marrying her, Rod?
I did, and she's a Dodgers fan too, which puts me at odds with her in the baseball world too, because I'm a San Francisco Giants fan. So it's
it's just a party at your house then.
Hey, listen, opposites attract, they say.
Yeah, that is true.
That is exactly what we have going on. Speaking of my Niners, 4-0. I mean, look at Christian McCaffrey. If you had him, and if you had him on your, if you're lucky enough to draft him on your fantasy team, you probably won the week. Dude had 4 overall touchdowns. Like I said, 3 on the ground, 1 receiving touchdown. Just an absolute beast, McCaffrey. 20 carries, 106 yards. Didn't even matter, though, because the 3 touchdowns is what did it. Brandon Ayuk, though, that was the story of the game. 6 targets, 6 receptions, 148 yards. Brock Purdy just carving up this Arizona defense. 20 of 21. Munaf, only 1 incompletion on the day. 283 yards in that touchdown to McCaffrey. 134.6 quarterback rating. The Niners came in as 14.5-point underdogs. I mean, they covered that. 2 touchdowns, 2.5 touchdowns, and they still covered it. And then the over-under set at 43.5. Almost got there themselves to the 49ers.
Rod, it's just another week where the best team in football is just dominating. I mean, they could possibly or should be 4-0 against the spread if Sean McVay didn't decide to kick that field goal in week 2 at the very end for them not to cover. They got hooked on that. But again, another game where they put up 30+ points with Brock Purdy at the quarterback position. And I think we've just beat this drum just so many times, is that Kyle Shanahan's just putting Brock Purdy in the right situations, and he's living up to that, I guess, expectation now of what he is. And again, the weapons are healthy. Hopefully they can stay healthy. I know there's some question marks about Debo possibly not playing or Brandon Ayuk not playing, but I think even if one of those guys didn't play in this game, I think they still would have taken care of this business because we know Cardinals had one of the lowest win totals coming into the season. We know that defense was going to be bad. Brock Purdy carved them up. Christian McCaffrey did his thing. And again, like I mentioned at the top of the show, I think we need to start having that conversation of Christian McCaffrey for MVP because I think him and Josh Allen probably have been the two guys that have just been absolutely monsters. I know traditionally a running back or a wide receiver doesn't win the MVP, typically goes, to a quarterback. But for what he's been able to do thus far this season, it's been absolutely incredible. And again, what a breath of fresh air for this 49ers team, having a player like that. And I guess us seeing what this guy is really capable of, because sometimes it was, shadowed when he was with Carolina because a lot of people didn't pay attention to the Panthers. But now with the Niners, we're seeing on full display what Christian McCaffrey is all about.
Oh, absolutely. And Nick Fortune over here in the chat really wish they would keep CMC on the side for at least a few plays. Look, man, when you're that red hot, you don't want to take a weapon like that out of the. I get it. I know you don't want to injure him because he's definitely been injury prone too in the past. But I mean, look, we're 4 games into the season, Munaf, and we barely talk about George Kittle, who has been one of the weapons on this team for so many years, and he doesn't need to do anything other than block now for Christian McCaffrey. And to be honest with you, I don't think he cares either way.
And that's the beauty of it, right? Because when you have Christian McCaffrey, you have Deebo Samuel, you have Brandon Ayuk. I don't think George Kittle cares because he's just a team player, right? And I was on his overs on his props this week just because I was continuing to fade the Arizona Cardinals defense against that tight end position, but they didn't even need him because Christian McCaffrey led the way, Brandon Ayuk led the way, and then the defense did their thing. So again, I mean, another 30-plus point game with Brock Purdy at the quarterback position in their home games. It'll be interesting to see if the books do adjust to their team total, because again, if it's anything under 30, you got to continue pounding the over for this 49ers team total week to week.
2-1-3 teams in the Arizona Cardinals and the Cincinnati Bengals meet next week. Cincinnati traveling to Arizona for that. And then, of course, we talked about it. San Francisco taking on Dallas next week as well. So, I mean, for San Francisco, they're home against Dallas. It should just be pretty cut and dry as to them taking care of business. And for Arizona, they got to beat the Bengals if they want to, if they just want to hold serve at this point, because their chances for the NFC West are just slipping away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going. I think we're going to start seeing some regression from the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, I think one thing that we do need to talk about with the Cardinals is how well Josh Dobbs has played for this Arizona Cardinals team. I mean, he's been fighting and he's been keeping this team in games. I should say at least in the first half or so. But I don't think that's talked about enough for the Arizona Cardinals. So. I think there's also been question about if Kyler Murray does come off of that, physically unable to perform list. Is there really a reason for him to be out there for this Arizona Cardinals team? Because again, a lot of us thought that they end up having the number 1 overall pick for this upcoming draft in the NFL. So I think it's going to be a smash spot next week for the 49ers. I don't think it's going to be a close. I think I saw a 3.5. For the 49ers. I mean, I would smash that against this Cowboys team. I think they are going to run through them
easily. I mean, they were the only team that was even double-digit favorites coming into this week, and they covered that spread. So I should tell you everything you need to know about what to expect from the Niners this season. All right, finally, we wrap it up with Sunday Night Football's game. Kansas City Chiefs, New York Jets. Well, I think you were one pass interference penalty away from really hating life, because here's the thing. This was, the Chiefs and the Jets, the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Jets 23-20. The Chiefs 7.5 point favorites or 8.5 point favorites, depending on where you got it. So they did not cover this one. If you took the Jets and the points, you were pretty happy about that. But here's the thing. Over under was set at 42.5. So you actually got this one if you took the over. So you were pretty happy about that. So you can thank the refs, I guess, for a Kansas City win and just kind of pack it up and say goodnight.
Yeah, I think, again, we talked about this at the top of the show, but again, we got to give Jets credit for the way they fought back in this game. They were down 17-0, I think, within that first half or first quarter, I want to say. But Zach Wilson made some plays. The defense made some plays as well. They got a safety. on the, I think it was the personal foul face mask on the right tackle of the Chiefs, and that kind of gave them some momentum coming into this game, into that second half, and they were able to tie it up. And they fought, right? And again, like you mentioned, that last scramble by Patrick Mahomes, where he could have read it into the end zone and covered the number if you were on the Chiefs, but he decided to make the smart football play and just end the game for the Chiefs and get away with the victory. But for this Jets team, I know a lot of people have been shitting on Zach Wilson, but I think that, there is some blame on Zach Wilson, but I think that the way that he's been able to handle himself, especially in the media and all the scrutiny that he does get, I think the Jets will be okay, going forward. I think that Zach Wilson can only get better. But again, big game next week for this Jets team against the Denver Broncos. And we talked about that at the top of the show.
We sure did. But I want to look, Patrick Mahomes throwing 2 interceptions. It's going to happen. You got a guy like that who wants to take chances down the field. He's going to throw interceptions. I know everybody's freaking out about, Patrick Mahomes is blah, blah, blah. But, look, you're going to expect games like that out of him every once in a while. But I was impressed with Isaiah Pacheco. 20 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown. Had that 48-yard scamper. Like, listen, the CEH days are gone. You can definitely tell that Pacheco is definitely the man now. He runs hard. He runs fast. And I think he is exactly, and I know the announcer said it last night, but I'll echo it as far as he's what the Chiefs need. They need a running game that they can count on to take it off of Mahomes, and he doesn't have to be the guy. He only threw for 203 yards. So, that's kind of what you want, is you want to preserve a Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. Pacheco early in that game, I think he had like a 38 or 40-yard rushing touchdown for the Kansas City Chiefs. And again, we talked about teams and quarterbacks that need a running game. I think that maybe the Chiefs have found something with Pacheco and maybe CEH at that position. But I think for right now, for the Chiefs, it was just about them going on the road on Sunday Night Football, getting the job done, with Taylor Swift in attendance and just, Travis Kelce got off to a great start. But again, I think kind of coasted after that. But again, for this Chiefs team, another victory in the book, and they move on to next week.
I'm sure the Jets can shake it off. All right. That is it for week 4. We'll put that one in the books. Let's look ahead now to week 6, but I do want to recap what Justin and Ryan gave you guys earlier in the last look ahead. They gave you the following props, and I'll tell you about where they're at now. So they gave you Miami 4.5 versus the Giants. So if you look at what that line has done since then, you are now getting, where is it at?
Which one are you looking for?
Miami versus there it is. So now the Giants are 9.5 point underdogs. So that line jumped up 5 points to Miami, 4.5 points rather to Miami. So now Miami's -9 against the Giants, where they gave you -4.5. Definitely good value there. They gave you Washington -1 versus Chicago. Now Washington has jumped up to 6.5 point favorites. So that line definitely moved. Hopefully you grabbed it then. They gave you Detroit -5 versus Carolina. That line has moved a field goal now. It's -8.5 by way of Detroit. So they have lengthened, or they've extended their favorites. Then they gave you the Rams +7 versus Philly. That line now is in favor of, the Philadelphia Eagles are -4.5 now. So that line kind of, a field goal there for that line dropping. And then New England over, New Orleans. I'm scrolling here, guys. So if you're like, God damn, get there, Rod, I'll get there. That line has not moved. So New England stays 1 point favorite versus New Orleans. And then Arizona against Cincinnati. It was Arizona +7.5. That line is now at Arizona +3. So you lost if you did not get in on that one early. Good line picking by those guys. They're pretty good at this now.
Hey man, those guys are sharp, and we're just trying to do our best here to fill in for those guys, at least for this week here, Rod.
I concur. All right. So as we look ahead to week 6, Munaf, is there a line that you have that you think is mispriced?
I think we got to start with which one was that one that stuck out to me? And I hate giving double digit favorites here, but I think this line is going to move to a double digit favorite. That's going to be the Dolphins hosting the Carolina Panthers. I currently see that at 8.5 in favor of the Dolphins against the Panthers, but I would not be surprised if that crosses over to 9.5 and over double digits for this Miami Dolphins team. Again, I think this will be a huge mismatch. Carolina possibly still winless going up against Miami down in South Beach. We talk about weather and all that good stuff, and Miami bouncing back is, I know, again, we're talking about week 6 here, but I think Miami at home is just a different animal. So I think at 8.5, I think that number is definitely going to be on the move, possibly into double digits.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's Miami. Like this is why looking ahead gets you so much value, because say that Miami does come out and absolutely dominates, and Carolina looks bad again. You're right. This is going to be more along the lines of the San Francisco line we just saw in the 12 to 14 range. So grab it now, then you don't have to worry about it so much. So I like that. I don't know what's going on here. I'm looking at this number, and I don't know if I am understanding what it is. San Francisco -1 against Cleveland. Okay, I'll take. How can you? I mean, look, that's ridiculous. That's like this is going to jump up to at least a touchdown, if not more, by the end of the day. So I think if you're watching this live, you should probably grab that now, because San Francisco -1 against Cleveland at -110. I really want to know what it's going to be like next week when we're looking at these lines again, because it's not going to stay there.
Yeah, that should probably move to 3 at least by the open of next week, in my opinion, and just probably on the move. And again, I think a lot of it may just depend on Deshaun Watson's shoulder. But I think for this San Francisco 49ers team, I mean, we've talked about they've just been running through every team that's been in front of them. I know Cleveland has a well above average defense that's going to be going up against, Christian McCaffrey and the likes of Brock Purdy as well. But I mean, for how dominant the Niners have been, I would not be surprised if this gets outside of, -3 up to 3.5, possibly 4. But yeah, I agree with you about that one as well.
All right, Munaf, another one for you.
I think we got to go over to the game between the this one's a little bit tricky. The Patriots and the Raiders. Right now, I'm seeing the Raiders as a 1-point underdog against the New England Patriots. We talk about revenge factors in this game, right? Bill Belichick going up against, Josh McDaniels, and you have Jimmy Garoppolo going possibly, hopefully playing at that point against the New England Patriots. But from what we've seen against this Patriots team, especially against the Cowboys last week, and I just have not been very impressed with this Patriots team. And I know a lot of people sort of scratch our heads when we talk about the Raiders and what Josh McDaniels does on the offensive side and making some of the decisions. But I think when we look at it from a talent perspective, especially on the offensive side of the football, I trust Jimmy Garoppolo more. I have the best wide receiver by far, possibly in the city with Devontae Adams. I just don't trust Mac Jones, and I think that Max Crosby and that defense will be able to feast against, if it is Mac Jones at that point. But I think that number should probably move in favor of the Las Vegas Raiders when it comes to week 6 against hosting the Patriots. So I would not be surprised if we get a -1, -2, possibly 2.5 in favor of the Raiders.
Yeah, this is one that could end up, you're right, flipping over to it being the Raiders as a favorite. So if you grab them as an underdog now, way ahead of the game for week 6. All right, I'll talk about another NFC West matchup, and that's the Rams and Arizona. Rams right now 4.5-point favorites on this one. I mean, look, depending on what the Rams do next week, I feel like this could jump up to at least a touchdown if Arizona comes out and falls flat again, which they could very easily do. So, again, if you're in on this one, or listen, here's the thing too. If you want to grab Arizona, if you even want to kind of wait a little bit, maybe, I guess, and grab Arizona on this end of it, for them to fall out of favor, that would be a good idea too. But I still think the Rams are going to win this one. I think they're going to win this one going away, because I don't know that especially if Cooper Kupp comes back by next week or even by week 6, look, they're too strong of a team, and Arizona has done well to hold scrappy, but I don't think they're going to hang even within a touchdown of them. And I think it'll be a lot like what happened with San Francisco, where they're going to beat, by at least 10 points. So if you grab them at 4.5 now, you don't have to worry about this jumping up to 7.5 or even, 8 if the weeks continue on.
Yeah, and I think what Sean McVay has been able to do, over these first 4 weeks is identify some other weapons outside of Cooper Kupp, right? I know a lot of the talk has been about Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell as well. But again, getting Cooper Kupp back at 4.5 right now, that number is probably going to get up to, I would say 5.5, possibly 6, maybe outside of a touchdown. I'm not sure outside of a touchdown, but I think they would probably be favored by 6 or 6.5.
Yeah, again, if that line's going to move, then it's going to move before all is said and done. So I like it there. All right, one more for you, I believe. Yes, one more for you, Munaf.
I'm gonna go over to that week 6 matchup between the Commanders / Redskins / Washington football team, whatever you want to call them, going to Atlanta. I'm currently seeing Atlanta as a 2-point favorite. I'm not sure that makes a lot of sense to me because the Commanders, I think number one, definitely are the better defensive team here. There's no question about that. That front seven has been absolutely amazing, not only this season but the last season as well. And that's really been the strength of this team. I think they'll be able to slow down the rushing attack of the Atlanta Falcons led by Bijan Robinson. I've seen, Sam Howell has been more than capable through the first 4 weeks of the regular season. You have Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. I think that number is mispriced here. So I would not be surprised if this game is down to a pick by the time we get to the week 6 matchup between the Washington football team and the Atlanta Falcons. So I think that if you want to take a look at taking the Commanders here as an underdog, at +2 right now, possibly a +3.5 at DraftKings, what I'm seeing on the screen right now. But I think that will probably get down to a pick 'em, possibly -1 in favor of of Washington come week 6, going up against Atlanta in Atlanta.
I love it. All right, I'm going to round mine out with that Monday Night Football matchup. I'm looking at it right now. Dallas is actually a 1-point underdog right now to the Chargers. That's got me scratching my head. And I get it. I know that the Chargers are not as bad as their 2-2 record lets you believe, and maybe you think Dallas isn't as good as their 3-1 record leads you to believe. But I think as Dallas, as an underdog right now, I don't think that's going to last. I think this could end up, like you said, maybe as a pick 'em even, or even if it stays this way. I mean, again, I don't think it's going to stay as Dallas being the underdog, especially a 1 point. So I think Dallas is going to win this game. And I think right now, grabbing them at a point underdog at -110 is about the best price you're going to get this week, next week, and even at opening of week 6. This line's going to be all over the place. So I think taking Dallas now as a 1-point underdog is the way to go for Monday Night Football in week 6.
Yeah, again, we don't trust this Chargers team, right? I know this is going to be a matchup between two head coaches that maybe sometimes scratch your head, but I think defensively, with the Cowboys, I know they lost Travion Diggs in that secondary, but it'll be interesting to see what this Cowboys team will be able to do against this Chargers offense, and again, vice versa as well. So it's going to be a fun X's and O's matchup if you're kind of into those type of things as far as handicapping the game. But yeah, this will definitely be a great game for Monday Night Football.
All right. Hopefully we did some justice to this week 6 look ahead, and we held down the fort for Ryan and Justin. So I think that's about all for our show today. So as we roll on out of here, Munaf, the list is long, but tell everybody where they can find you on this network and all over the social media sphere.
Just follow me on Twitter or X, whatever you may call it, at SportsNerd824, and just do yourself a favor, just download the SGPN app or just head over to the website. You'll find all the work I'm doing over for the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, whether it's on the MLB, NBA, NFL, Propcast with my good friend Rod here. It's been a blast thus far, and we're kind of in that storm where we're having a lot of sports collide, so it's definitely busy times. But I appreciate everybody that supports the network. But again, like I mentioned, just download the app and make it easy for yourself.
Make it very easy for yourself. It's fun sitting back in this chair. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Justin, for letting me have it. And Munaf, again, thanks for joining me. Follow me on X at RJ Villagomez. There's a link in the bio to everything I got going on. Of course, in this network, NASCAR Gambling Podcast, the F1 Gambling Podcast, sometimes the IndyCar Gambling Podcast, the Propcast with Munaf. Like Munaf said, just download the app. You'll find us everywhere that we're there. And of course, the link to all the rest of the stuff. I got prop stuff coming out for Sportsbook Review as well. So kick some love over there as well. So, all right, everyone. Ryan and Justin will be back next week, maybe, unless we've fired them by then. But until then, everyone, have some fun out there. And enjoy week 5. Enjoy the Monday Night Football game tonight. And let it ride.